to keep it concise, here are the 10 flow hacks, and I will promise you that if you apply these hacks, you will have a much easier time to enter flow with the work that you do day in and day out, which of course will massively increase your productivity. What if I were to tell you that you can increase your productivity by 500% and get 5 days of work done in a single day, as proven by studies? And what about increasing your creativity by 430%, improving learning and memory by 200%, a 500% increase in meaning and purpose, and all of that combined with more grit and persistence? And well, the thing is, all of that is possible for you. You can accomplish incredible things in a very short amount of time. You can learn up to 8 to 10 hours a day with deep focus and actually enjoy it. And you can outcompete your competition and impress your friends, colleagues, or boss while winning time back for yourself, traveling, your hobbies, etc. And you can become your very best self. And well, the secret to all of that is flow, also called as the zone, which is a state of extreme immersion and optimal consciousness. And the most amazing aspect about flow is that, like the name implies, everything simply feels flowy and effortless. And on the other hand, what you do feels extremely pleasurable and addictive. The thing is that extreme sport athletes who are flow and not adrenaline junkies, in fact, get into flow all the time to give world-class performances. Now, that's it. By watching today's video, you will learn what flow is and the neuroscience behind it, so when flow occurs, as well as how and why flow feels the way it does, so the neurotransmitters that are involved. And again, this is very important for you also to know why flow works this way, and it will increase your understanding in general. And most importantly, at the end of the video, I will give you 10 simple hacks that you can apply today to get yourself into flow with the work that you do, day in and day out. That's it. As always, if you're excited, please smash that like and subscribe button, again, to make the channel grow. It would be incredible if we could hit 100 subscribers soon. And without further ado, let's dive into the video. Alright, to begin with, let's give you a better understanding of flow, and let's briefly kick off with its discovery, in fact. And generally, there were 3 psychologists that brought up the idea of flow. And important is that flow isn't just a random state in which you are more productive or in which you just feel great. Flow is in fact linked to having passion and purpose in life. And in other words, you enter the state of flow or extreme immersion when you work towards a greater good and to fulfill your potential. Now, more about that in a second. Now, generally, the first person to coin the idea of flow, although termed Rausch at the time, and by the way, Rausch, as you would spell it in German, means euphoric. It was by my German companion Friedrich Nietzsche here, and his idea of the Übermensch, or superhuman, in the 1870s. And Nietzsche, he believed in nihilism, which is the idea that God is dead, basically, because he saw religion as the enemy of the self-actualization of humans. Now, he wasn't fond of the idea that we humans should surrender to God, as proposed by the church, of course, because Nietzsche thought that our lives need to have meaning or value. And he also first coined the idea that embracing life, risk-taking, and achievement are fundamental for us humans, and that included things such as challenging misfortune, or the transcendence of society in general, as he called it, which means that every person should be independent from society, social systems, politics, etc., and that every individual should strive to become a better human. Now, next in the line would be Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of human needs. That was in the 1950s, in fact. So that's the next in line for flow. And generally, all of the things you see on the slide here need to be in place, and you build up from the bottom to the top to reach true self-actualization, and with it, of course, true happiness. Now, for example, once your basic needs are met, which would be physiological needs such as food, water, etc., and your safety needs on the level above that, then you of course strive for higher and higher levels as you go, as those needs on the bottom are met. And the next level in this case would be to have intimate relationships in the middle of the pyramid to fulfill the need of belonging that we all have. And as you can also see here, the most important needs that we humans have are the feeling of accomplishment, and at the top of the pyramid, self-actualization. So we have a genetic desire to reach our full potential, and striving to do so, in fact, is the key to happiness. Now, I made a video about the 3 levels of happiness we humans can reach, as proposed by psychological and neurobiological research, and it's also linked to the release of dopamine in the brain. And I'll link the video for you in the comments, so again, feel free to check it out after this video. Now, anyhow, flow then finally was first described by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Took me a while to spell his damn name, by the way. Anyhow, in the 1970s, and as Mihaly himself mentioned, is that it's not enough to be happy and have an excellent life. The point is to be happy while doing things that stretch our skills, that help us grow and fulfill our potential. Now, that said, to give a similar quote by Mihaly, that would be that the best moments in our lives are not passive, receptive, and relaxing times. The best moments usually occur if a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. Basically, the reason why those extremely challenging moments in our lives, why those are so fulfilling, is because of the release of specific neurochemicals in our brain that make us feel great and also evoke the flow state. So what you need to understand, the takeaway here is that evolution has established that we are rewarded with the release of these specific neurochemicals in our brain and with the flow state along with it, if we try to become our very best self and if we work towards self-actualization. And it's also the reason why those people that have purpose in their lives, that means those people that passionately work for a greater purpose beyond themselves, again to positively impact others, are actually also the happiest people in the world. Because again, purpose-driven individuals, they experience the most flow. And flow again is the most pleasurable state in existence. Now that's set to get into more detail. Let's have a look at the 6 main neurochemicals that are at play in the flow state and that are released in the brain. And this will also give you a better understanding of what is going on during flow, or when you are in a state of absolute peak performance, like the surfer here, for example. So first we have norepinephrine at the top, which is in fact a stress hormone. So a little bit of norepinephrine makes you excited, while too much of it causes anxiety. So by definition, you need some challenge, stress, or a mild push, otherwise you're not engaged enough to get into flow. The second neurotransmitter would be dopamine, which is also the feel-good neurochemical. And dopamine is in fact the key for flow, the key to enter flow, as we will see later. Anyhow, dopamine is actually well known for its addictive effect. And the release of dopamine in your brain, it feels very pleasurable and it motivates you to repeat the behavior that gave you dopamine. For example, drugs like heroin release a lot of dopamine, which is why drug addicts have such trouble to get off of drugs, in fact. And the same thing also happens in flow. It means that the activity that you do releases so much dopamine that even grinding it out when things get hard is pleasurable and addictive to you. A good example would be video gaming, because it releases a lot of dopamine, which makes it very addictive, and video gaming gets you into flow very easily. Now, another advantage of dopamine is that it increases your focus, your attention, and pattern recognition. And pattern recognition means that you have an easier time to link information and ideas in your head, which as a consequence also improves your creativity. Now, as a side note, fun fact, if both norepinephrine and dopamine are simultaneously released in your brain, you get the feeling of romantic love. Now, next on the list is endorphins. Now, endorphins are painkillers. I just mentioned that grinding things out when it gets hard, but it still feels great and addictive to you in the flow state. So they could, for example, be when you squeeze out those last reps in the gym, or when you just work hours and hours and hours beyond fatigue. You keep doing it. And one of the reasons why you can actually do this, why you can keep going, is because of endorphins. Because those endorphins, they numb your sense of pain. Now, you can be fatigued, you can feel worn down, you can have headache, you can even be injured, in fact, as it could be the case in sports, for example. But again, in flow, because of the release of endorphins, you don't feel any of that. Now, fourth on the list would be anandamide, which causes euphoria. And as a fun fact, if you are deeply in flow, you become extremely, if not overly optimistic, in fact. So you basically get into a high. And that can even lead to mystic experiences, as it has in fact been described by extreme athletes, musicians, etc. So it's basically if you were to inject drugs into yourself, just more intense. Fifth on the list is oxytocin. Now, critically spoken, oxytocin is actually not necessary for individual flow. It's actually more required for group flow. Anyhow, to answer your question, yes, group flow exists as well. And group flow is actually when everyone works together towards a shared goal, and each individual team member, they basically fuse to create a collective mind. And it's also when every team member basically works together perfectly to give absolute peak performance. Generally, oxytocin is released when you make eye contact, when you hug, when you speak to someone you trust, when you share things, when you exchange gifts, etc. So it's basically a social hormone. And the effect of oxytocin is that you become more empathetic, you become more compassionate, and your trust in others increases. And again, all of these effects, they improve bonding. So again, oxytocin is a pro-social neurochemical. And of course, because it's pro-social, it makes sense that oxytocin is needed for group flow in teamwork and less for your personal flow. And last, of course, is serotonin. Now, I haven't mentioned it on the slide here, but serotonin increasing drugs are given to those with depression because serotonin improves your mood. That said, serotonin also gives you the feeling of satisfaction. For example, after you tick off a task on your to-do list, so the little nice feeling of satisfaction you get, that's serotonin. And it also calms you down and makes you feel safe. And again, having a good mood, feeling satisfied, etc., all of these things are crucial parts of the flow state. Next would be the keys to unlock flow, and those are actually quite simple. Now, the first thing that you need is to invoke the release of dopamine or norepinephrine in your brain. And there are over 20 flow triggers. 22 are known so far, to be precise, and several of them release dopamine or norepinephrine in your brain. They could, for example, be the combination of curiosity, passion, and purpose. It could be novelty. It could be autonomy, getting the challenge and skills balanced right. Or it could be pattern recognition, So again, pattern recognition means that you make a connection in your brain and that you link two pieces of information or two ideas in your head together. That's when dopamine is released. You get a little ding, basically. Other than that, other flow triggers could be a risk. So if you're taking risks, it could definitely be clear goals. Having clear goals is also a flow trigger, etc. Now, for the sake of this video, I will just keep it at that. So if you're interested in learning more about the flow triggers and getting more details, let me know in the comments. Anyhow, the second main way to enter flow is to reduce cognitive load. What you need to know is that the brain only has a limited bandwidth. It's comparable to a computer, and you can only do a limited amount of things at once. So if you want to know the stats, we can only process 126 bits of information per second max. And that's actually in flow with extreme processing power, which isn't much, by the way. So basically, the more you do it once, the less capacity you have in your brain left, and the less room and capacity you have to focus. And it's not just doing multiple things at once that costs brain capacity. If you constantly worry, if you're afraid, if your mind wanders away from work, if you get distracted, etc., all of these things, they cost brain capacity. And the thing is that even ignoring something is an active process and costs brain capacity. For example, if your phone just lies beside your laptop while you work, you have to constantly use some of your brain capacity to ignore your phone that's lying right there in order to stay focused on your work. So the key is to keep your mind clear and to preemptively remove any possible distractions, especially a goddamn phone. And the less you have to think about, this also includes to write down what you have to do step by step. Again, make it super easy. Again, the less you have to think about, the more focused you will be, and the easier you slip into flow. Now, once you are in flow, you will notice the following. And the first thing would be extreme immersion or complete concentration on the task in front of you. That is actually a flow trigger in itself, by the way. So besides this extreme focus that you will have in flow, the second thing would be that action and awareness merge. And usually, as you go through your daily life, you are of course aware of the task that you're doing, and you can imagine or see yourself as a bystander from an external perspective. So you can imagine yourself sitting here doing your work, for example. So you have this internal view and you have an external view. And in flow, that's gone. It's swept away. You basically become one with the task that you do. And what it means that you only think about the task at hand, you merge with this task, and any secondary thoughts in your head about yourself, about others, about the world, so this external view, it pretty much vanishes. So basically only you and the task exist when you are in flow. You are one with the task. And that is actually literal, because in flow you do lose your sense of self. As crazy as it sounds, you forget yourself. You forget that you need to go to the bathroom. You forget eating. I've even heard about the crazy case of a gamer who played uninterrupted 4 days in deep flow and died of thirst. Not to scare you, that's quite hardcore, but again, in flow, you forget about yourself. And also related to forgetting yourself is that time disappears. So it dilates. 5 hours can feel like 5 minutes, or vice versa. And the reason why you forget yourself and you lose your sense of time is mainly because of your prefrontal cortex. That is the center of logical thought, of long-term planning, of self-doubt, and even the expression of your personality. So the prefrontal cortex, it's shut off during flow. And in addition to that, a few other brain areas are shut off with it. Now, I will not go into details here, But the point is that shutting off these brain areas, it gives you extra thought capacity. It gives you extra room. And again, if you have more capacity and more room in your brain, then you can focus better. And that is what happens in flow. That's why you have this extreme focus in flow. Now, other than that, you also experience a feeling of extreme control and of proficiency in flow. And most importantly, the last point here is that flow feels autotelic. Now, autotelic means that the activity that you do feels so amazing that you just can't wait to do it again. It's like video gaming. So what it means that if you master flow, then the work itself, the activity itself, and not accomplishing a goal actually, becomes the reward for you. So again, you often hear the phrase, I love what I do, from those extremely successful entrepreneurs and peak performers. And again, the reason is flow. They love what they do because what they do gets them into flow. And generally spoken, if you love what you do, then you get into flow easier, and vice versa. You get into flow with your work, or if you manage to get into flow with your work, then you will start to love it. Now, as a side note, you can even, or basically there is in fact a flow short scale or a questionnaire to measure whether someone is in flow. And in this case, you are basically asked questions like, I feel just the right amount of challenge. My thoughts and activities run fluidly and smoothly, and I do not notice time passing, or maybe I'm totally absorbed in what I'm doing. So questions like that. And you would score these questions on a scale from 1 to 7, 1 meaning that it doesn't apply to you at all, and 7 meaning that it's true for you and that you are in flow. And again, you can basically use a questionnaire like that, a flow questionnaire, to assess study participants or to assess whether you yourself are in flow. Now, thank you for sticking with me until now. Now, that said, was it insightful for you? And did you learn something new? So if yes, hit the like button real quick and let me know what was new or insightful for you in the comments. Again, flow knowledge is key. Then again, let's get into the actual meat. And to keep it concise, here are the 10 flow hacks. And I will promise you that if you apply these hacks, you will have a much easier time to enter flow with the work that you do day in and day out, which of course will massively increase your productivity. Now, the first thing would be that you should do what you want to do, or you want to do what you have to do. And the reason is autonomy, because that gives you autonomy. Now, autonomy by itself is a flow trigger and even a source of intrinsic motivation. The thing is that we all like to steer our own ship. We want to do our own stuff. And it makes sense. I'm sure someone forced work onto you guys before. How did you feel? Were you motivated to crush it when someone just loaded a bunch of work on your plate without your agreement? Let's say when you had to write that random article about the history of whatever. Well, probably not. So if you remember it from earlier, feeling a sense of control over what you do is a key characteristic of the flow state. So either do what you want to do or want to do what you have to do. And if you want to do what you have to do, that means that you just need to come up with a reason as to why you want to do what is forced onto you. The second thing would be that there's always a ramp up phase before you get into flow. And I've noticed this myself a lot in the past, for example. Looking back, I was actually studying 8 to 10 hours for my postgraduate exams in biomedicine back then. And that didn't just work from day one. I couldn't just sit down and learn 8 to 10 hours in flow with deep focus. I had to ramp it up, and it took several days, over which it became easier and easier to stick with the work and to stay in flow, of course, and to work longer and longer. So again, generally keep this ramp up phase in mind for flow. Next to the list would be tip or hack 3 and 4, which is to set a crystal clear and challenging goal, which is a flow trigger, by the way, clear goals. And 4 would be to map out what you do step by step, because that decreases your cognitive load. Now, the point is that you must keep your mind, again, as clear as possible. The less you think, the more space you free up in your brain to focus. And to avoid unnecessary thinking and to reduce cognitive load, you need to set a clear goal that you can push towards, and you need to have a step-by-step list that you can follow. And the advantage is that if all of that is in place, if you have a goal, if you have a list that you just have to execute, you don't need to think anymore. Again, just execute your step-by-step list and you get to your goal. That's it. Nothing to worry, nothing to think about, and only your work in front of you. Now, setting a clear goal also has another advantage because it prevents overwhelm. For example, back then for my biomedicine degrees, I had to learn over 1,000 PowerPoint slides word by word. That's scary. That's overwhelming, especially when you get started, trust me. And by setting a clear goal that you can complete in a 90 to 120 minute flow session, it allows you to get rid of this feeling of overwhelm. So you basically chunk down this massive, intense goal into a small, tiny piece that you can finish, and that will increase your motivation massively. And it's also the key, again, to avoid anxiety. And once again, less overwhelm, less worrying, less anxiety, all of that frees up brain capacity. It reduces cognitive load, so you can focus better and you can deliver better work. Number 5 would be to have an all-in or all-out approach. So there should not be a gray zone. And this is very important because what you want to do is to constantly push forward with full effort, with full focus, and do that towards the goal that you've set. And what you want to avoid is this basically half-assed way of working, in which you're half focused on the work you do and half focused on what you could eat for dinner or what cat video you're missing on Facebook right now. So again, the recipe for flow is to have complete concentration on a single thing and nothing else, which is a flow trigger in itself, by the way. So push with full power, go all in, and when you notice that you slow down, take a break in which you fully and consciously relax and you do nothing else but relax. And that brings us to the next point, which is number 6. Expect energy slumps every 90 to 120 minutes and apply active recovery. Now, all of us, we have a natural biorhythm, and it means that our energy levels fluctuate over the course of the day. So those mini energy cycles are called ultradian rhythms, by the way. And the best way to deal with an energy slump is to expect it and just roll with it. So what that basically means is that you should incorporate a 5 to 10 minute break when you notice that your mental speed slows down. And you should do that every 90 to 120 minutes. And the point here is to unload your brain to recharge. So don't grab your damn phone and overload your brain with cat videos, memes, and other nonsense. You can do that later. Anyhow, the best way to unload your brain is to do things that are not stimulating. So that means that you can just close your eyes, stare at the wall in your room, just have a quick walk without music. You can do some stretching, etc. So whatever it is that you do, you will notice that your brain will lighten up. So you can literally feel how the stress level goes down. Only takes a few minutes. Your mind will clear up. And once you cleared up and energized again, then you can keep going. Have another 90 to 120 minute flow block, ideally. 7 would be to break the initial resistance or the struggle phase. So this is key. So let me make this very, very clear. There must be a struggle phase in the beginning. Flow has 4 phases, and the first one is inevitably struggle. You need this brief feeling of struggle and overwhelm in the beginning, because it causes release of the stress hormone norepinephrine in your brain. And if you remember earlier, norepinephrine is required for flow. So don't see the initial feeling of struggle as bad. Just reframe the struggling feeling as something good, because you need it for flow, and it's an indicator that you will get into the addictive and very productive flow state in a few moments. Now, in other words, when you start working, it must feel a little bit arduous. That's necessary. You cannot skip it. So just tackle the task that you want to do head on. Just go all in. And as you keep working, again, your mind will warm up, so to speak, and things will gradually become more and more flowy. 8 on the list would be to have 0 distractions, interruptions, and no task switching whatsoever. And again, this is for reducing cognitive load. So block off time in your schedule to work only. Close the door to your office. Tell your friends, colleagues, and family that you don't want to be disturbed. They can fuck off. And remove any potential distractions. So no phone, no emails, etc. So you can basically do all of these things afterwards. And focus on your work. Crush it. Number 9 would, of course, be to disregard time. Now, personally, I actually remind myself of how I felt when I pulled all-nighters for my biomedicine degree back then. I don't recommend that, by the way. I just had no other choice back then. But in flow, doing the activity itself is the reward. It's autotelic. And what I found is that whenever I started to worry that I run out of time or how long it would take to get things done, so every time I stared on the goddamn clock, for example, in my room here, it would pull me out of flow. So in other words, it would create all of these negative emotions and thoughts in my head, and would literally just clog my mind. Again, anxiety, nervousness. Do I get it done? Do I have enough time to finish it? Etc. So again, in order to end the flow, you need to keep pushing forward. You need to keep your mind clear, and you need to keep your prefrontal cortex shut off. So no worries, no doubts, no anxiety. And yeah, personally, I found that just ignoring time basically helped me to get into flow. I even turned away the clock in my room, and I still do it when I work, so they can fully dive into what I want to do and just work until it's done. All nights alike. And lastly, we have a recovery phase, which is mandatory. Now, flow is expensive. It not only costs a lot of energy to sustain deep focus for multiple hours, but the thing is that it depletes, so flow depletes the neurochemicals in your brain that are needed for flow. And it takes a while for your body to resynthesize all of these neurotransmitters. And that is also the reason why you usually feel pleasantly fatigued after you've had flow. And also after getting out of flow, again, which is also a state of euphoria thanks to anandamide, it can also happen that you get a bit moody. So if you feel a bit off after flow session, don't worry, that's normal. It will fade as soon as you have recovered. So make sure to take time off, again, to enjoy yourself, to recover. Because flow costs a lot of energy. And if you're not fully recovered, you cannot sustain flow. Don't make your life hard in that case, what that means. So get the flow, get the sleep that you need, and with it the flow. Eat well, work out, and also consciously and strategically schedule that well-deserved free time in which you can relax, calm down, enjoy your hobbies, catch up with your friends, and spend up time with your loved ones. That will not just keep you in peak shape mentally, but then again, by staying in flow, thanks to the fact that you're recovered, your productivity will actually explode. Again, flow has a 500% productivity increase, so you can get 5 days of work done in a single day. And what it means is that you will win back the time, and probably even make more time than you ever had to enjoy yourself, to relax, to live life, and to again get the recovery I mentioned. So along with that, sense of purpose will also increase, because again, flow is the state of peak performance and self-actualization. So if you manage to get yourself into flow with the work that you do day in and day out. Then you will be sorted. And that brings us to the end of the video. So please make sure to smash that like button and to subscribe so that I know what you like. And of course, to let me know what videos actually interest you the most to make more of these in the future. And please also share the video with your friends or those who could benefit from it so that we can create an army of high performers together. Also, as I mentioned earlier, did you learn something new about flow? And would you like a video about the 22 flow triggers? Again, let me know in the comments, also because spelling it out in your own words helps you to memorize things better. Anyhow, that's it. Have a flow week, everyone. See you.